Wow, the hero's journey. I heard about this probably close to 3 years ago. And it's actually something I learned about through Star Wars. The Star Wars series is about a hero's journey. And every time I hear the story of Star Wars, even though I'm actually really not a big fan, my first Star Wars was a year and a half ago. The one, I don't know, 2 Decembers ago that came out, and it was pretty good. It was about the girl and she goes, does the thing, and etc. Pretty much like any other Star Wars. Jin Russo, I think. Anyways, that's besides the point. Uh, I had no idea how embedded Joseph Campbell's work was in Star Wars and how George Lucas ended up making it a multi-million, if not multi-billion dollar industry. And obviously, if Disney and all these other companies come knocking at your door, I think you know you've made it. But this isn't about this, nor is it about that. This is about me and my hero's journey, and it's ever evolving because I don't think it really ever ends unless you obviously believe in the afterlife and things like that, and whatever you believe, whether it be dogs, pigs, cats, goats, doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, it helps you, and that's what it is. So let's start from the beginning, and I'll walk you through some of the crucial parts, some of the things I remember, and where I'm currently at, where I'm going, and all that fun stuff in between. And one thing you really realize with me is that it's funny. It's funny how looking back at things, I can see how they shaped where I'm currently at. And when things shape where I'm currently at, it actually shapes where I'm going as well. So that's definitely one thing I realize a lot. Okay, so let's back up. So for Jenny, came out of the womb. No, I'm just kidding. So let's fast forward. So 5 years old, I grew up in a middle class area in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. So that's just north of North Dakota. So close to Minnesota, about a 8 hour drive south, 8 hour drive north of Minnesota for you guys in the US. And in Canada, it's beside Saskatchewan and I believe Ontario. Yeah, I believe Ontario. Saskatchewan to the west, Ontario to the east, central North America. So super cold in the winter. We're talking Celsius -30, and in the summers, not super humid, but decently humid. Summers get up to 30, 35 with some humidity. Not, like I said, not super humid. But the crazy part about it is it actually gave me what it is I needed at that time. And here's what I mean. Growing up, I got really lucky. I had two parents, mom, dad, and a sister. And my parents pretty much gave me as much as they could. I don't mean in the monetary sense, but in the sense of life. They gave me a chance to do ballet, do violin, do piano, and just had all sorts of opportunity. But at the time, it came at a cost, or so I thought it came at a cost. And I'll get into how I changed that later. But it came at a cost because nothing ever felt like it was really free. It's not like I could just one day, okay, do piano and just do it for fun. It always had to be some form of attachment to it. For instance, I'd have to practice, and then we'd have to go to the recital, or we'd have to go to the competition, or we'd have to go to the examination. And a part of me, because of that, I started to resent it. Piano, violin, especially. I started to resent having to do those things because they never felt like it was something I was choosing. I modeled it actually quite a bit off my sister. My sister ended up going into piano, violin, uh, ballet, and I'll get into that part later. But growing up, it just felt forced. And it's funny, as an adult, there's so many things I know I should do, but I force myself not to do them because of the way I used to feel as a kid. And I made this linkage that there used to have this belief that even if you don't like doing something, you still have to do it. But I realized that's actually just a potential model that we've been modeling wrong because I see that in even house cleaning, right? A lot of people say you should clean your own house, but the irony is all the people that are successful and wealthy and whatever it may be, none of them actually clean their own house. Part of it's because they don't really have the time. And the other part of it is because they can leverage that time and give it to someone else and help someone else do whatever job they do and have that clean their house. So that's one quick tidbit. But back to my story. So growing up, that was the case. And I was really sheltered. I didn't really have any friends. I lived in the south part of the city. I went to school in almost the northern part, so pretty much between central and north. And it was pretty far. I mean, it was a good like that time, and we're talking surface roads, so 30 like a good 35-minute drive on surface roads, so not using highways or anything like that. So it's decently far. I mean, think about it, I'm like 5 years old, right? And I've my parents have to drive me. So they would drive me there and back because it was a special school. It was a French immersion school. So what that means is that predominantly, well, technically it was 50-50, but it was more 60-40. It was 60% French and 40% English. So three classes in the day would be French and two in English, something of that nature. Obviously, it changes throughout the years, et cetera, et cetera. And part of that reason is my parents wanted to have the full Canadian effect because Canadians should be bilingual. And they believe that that was the case. And I'm not blaming them by any stretch of the imagination. They did the best they can with what they have. But I also realize what they gave me wasn't exactly what I wanted. And that was a challenge. That became a challenge later on because certain things would happen in my life and it would challenge some of those beliefs and would challenge some of those things. So going back to that, I felt lost a lot growing up. And I just felt I was different than all the kids. I was the only Asian in Central Canada. Central Canada. I was the only Asian in that school. And it was tough. I didn't really know where I fit in. I had obviously people I would hang out with, but I never really had any major friendships or people I would consider super close. I think on weekends I wouldn't really have play dates or anything like that. I would be either studying or working or playing piano or something like that or practicing, and that was just what it was. Um, in a way, I found a way to entertain myself and get creative with entertaining myself, but at the same time, it was challenging. It was lonely. I didn't really have, like, I had obviously my family near me, but at the same time, I didn't really develop organic friendships. And even as an adult, to say that, it just sounds weird. Not in a negative way, but just in an ineffective way at that time. And I would say that it challenges me. It challenges me daily because I realize now that maybe it wasn't that I never had any really good friendships, it's I realized that I just never learned how to be a better communicator so that I can communicate what it is I needed. Because every time I would communicate something I would need, I would either get rebuffed or there'd be some sort of attachment to it. Like, for instance, I remember even as a young kid, I would want to watch, say, a TV show, a cartoon, sports show, whatever it may be. And, but there was always an attachment to it. For instance, I couldn't just watch it just to watch it. There had to be like, okay, you had to earn it through cleaning the house, or you had to earn it through keeping your room clean, or you had to earn it through practicing. And because of that rigidity, it caused a ton of challenges. And because of that, it caused a lot of animosity. So after a while, I mean, fast forward, uh, I was bullied a lot as a kid. I did some of the bullying too, so it was like a two-way bullying. Not proud of it, but I realized that when I bullied someone, I realized what they felt was because they felt on top of the other person, but what I really felt was insecure about myself, so I had to take it out on other people because that's what my parents did. They were insecure about themselves, so they took it out on other people because their vented up frustration and their vented up stress, so they took it out on us and became this whole cycle. And because of that, it became a challenge later on because we would end up holding secrets from them. Like, for instance, we would take recreational uh, medicines and go into the forest and do things that we shouldn't talk about. And this is a recorded, right? So, no, but on a serious note, we would stay up all night or stay up all day. And I remember one time in high school, I stayed up for literally 24 hours just to see, under the influence, obviously, and it felt good. It felt amazing to rebel. I was proud of myself. And pretty much throughout school, I created an identity. I created an identity of I'm just some shy kid who doesn't fit in, who doesn't really speak English, doesn't really speak French as fluently as I could, and became who I was. And I just fabricated. So this was for them, and this was me. This is for them, and this is me. Then confusion set in. So I was really lost. And by that point, I had reached now going on to university. So we moved to Vancouver. I had gone to school, got accepted at SFU, one of the local schools here, and those 4 years were tough. I got kicked out my first year because I just didn't love what I was studying, and I was going into pharmacy, but I'm just not a pharmacist. Because at that time, pharmacy what felt like a path, like, okay, I can get into pharmacy, I can do the school, and then I can graduate and be a pharmacist. And it's crazy. I just remember like going through that first year, like failing completely, and thinking that was the end of my life. And then ended up graduating. Only took one extra year, so graduated in 5 years instead of four. So I have a bachelor's in psychology because I've always liked people. I've always liked humans. I've always liked to understand how they think. What I didn't realize is psychology takes another 2 years for masters, at least in Canada, and then 4 years for your PhD. So that's another 6 years of school. And I didn't want to do that, so I stopped on my bachelor's. So then I ventured off into HR. So I have a certificate in HR, but I never really did anything with that either. But I also realized that I was getting further away from what it is I really wanted. And so you start exploring, right? I mean, I'm the kind of person that likes to try new things. So I would buy. I just remember buying like internet programs in its infancy. We're talking like 2008, 2009, whatever infant program I could get my hands on, I would do it. And eventually I moved to Montreal, and that was a really fun experience. I had a really fun 3 years. Uh, I'll just spare the details, but it's at that point where I got into massive financial debt and I actually had to move back, and I actually got laid off as well. But part of it was because I realize now was because I needed to grow up. And I don't mean that in a physical sense, and I mean that in an emotional sense and mental and a communication and a confidence sense, because I realized I was playing the game small. And at that time, in terms of the hero's journey, I was so disillusioned. I mean, I dropped $50,000, $100,000 on programs, and I could never actually, uh, I could never, how do I say it? I could never figure it out. I would start something, I'd run away from it. I would start it, I'd run away. I'd start it and run away. It never even became a money thing at this point. I mean, I was drowning, right? And the crazy part is you never know the day that changes your life. And I'm so thankful for this day because honestly, if I didn't know this person would come into my life would be completely different. And it's crazy to think about. So I was going through my spam email one day, not because I like going through my spam email, but because I was looking for something. I was looking for something I can't remember what it was. I think it was maybe like a relationship newsletter or some form of marketing newsletter, whatever it may be. And in the spam email, the subject was want more confidence. Now, when you're sitting at home alone on a dark night and you see that, it piqued my interest. I'm like, you know what? I'm already in this tough shape. let me see what can happen. So I clicked on it, and up popped this man. I know, no, not like Jack in the Box, not like a Joker or something. No winding up, but up popped this individual, and he said something that day that I will never forget. He said, "What if you had all the confidence in the world, you could handle any situation, and everything would just work out?" And then he explained that you need to work on four things to get there. And for some reason, that day just held on to me. And I realized at that time that he was speaking to me because I lost myself. I was in so many directions, I was in so much debt. And at that point, I realized it's time. It's time to take my life more serious. I'm 20, that time 28, 29, 27, 27 to 29. I'm living alone. I don't know what I'm doing. And it was hard. It was easy putting a mask on. It was easy not being me and not speaking up for what I wanted. And so, long story short, it's true when the student is ready, the mentor appears. So he appeared in my life. And let me just say, the last, I think that's almost 2.5 years now, have been nothing short of a blessing. It's actually how I was open to the idea of Sifu Den. Because the reality is before the last 2 years, I didn't know anything about myself. I didn't know what emotions I felt. I didn't know what my mental challenges were. And I don't mean that in an extreme sense. I mean the thoughts I would say to myself, the things I would say to myself. I didn't realize how I was projecting my communication or how I was understanding external and internal communication. And I didn't realize what what the confidence was, the confidence metric. And that was a challenge because those four things are what controls our life. So I would end up, so I've been studying with him. And if we go to the hero's story, it's at that part I experience for the first time ordeal and tests, allies, crossing the threshold, all that stuff. So step 5 to 8, 9, even 5 to 8 is pretty much what happened because I had to work on myself. And I'm talking deep work, like stuff I don't think anyone on any given day wants to talk about, stuff we're talking about. Like I went to, let me put it to you this way. I was so serious about my communication. I went to 6 of his live events in a 2-year period. 6. And this guy studied under Tony Robbins. But he was the best I had ever seen. He's the only person other than Dan, now obviously before Dan, but that actually made things make sense to me, that actually made things make me understand. I understand people better. I understand humans better. I understand what it means to look at something from someone else's perspective. And I'm not saying I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but what I am saying is that there is a way. And it's working on four things. It's working on your emotions, it's working on your mental construct, so the thoughts you tell yourself, your communication, your confidence. And without those four things, you won't ever make it. Because those are the four building blocks to everything in your life. And I realize that now. I mean, because of that, I've changed around my finances. It's obviously not perfect, but I'm working on it. It's how I change around my health. I went from someone that was not working out. I never worked out for 7 years, and now I've been working out almost 2 years straight and eating super healthy. Sorry, I shouldn't say super healthy. Healthier than I once was. It's because of this gentleman that I have lower self moments. Obviously, we all do. But days, weeks, months of it doesn't really happen anymore because I know how to play with what it is I tell myself. I just know how to I change my state when I do it myself. It's how really that I was actually chosen to be part of at the time. Obviously, Kayvon's graduation interviews and closing, right? Closing on 2 projects for him. It's because of this. And I realize now that this is the crucial element. And the crazy part about the story is I realize now that once you get to a certain level, there's just another level. So I had the problem I originally had was, how do I get out of the hole? My new problem is how do I build a better ladder to get there faster? So that's the new problem I'm encountering. And my newest challenge is that now I have to figure out where it is the next step is. Because now I've worked on so many great things and I ended up, if you guys haven't seen it, I ended up on Dan's team part-time. So I work for Team Dan Lok part-time. Please don't go and share that with the whole world. But yeah, you'll see me actually, I think in one of the videos they just posted about how to hire. I'm actually in that video. I didn't even realize they were filming, but obviously the best time to catch someone is when it's unexpected, right? And I realize when Dan says that perfect place, perfect time, perfect person, for the current moment, that's what I am. I'm in the perfect place, perfect time, perfect person. And I realize now that everything my mentor taught me the last 2 years is how I ended up here. And one thing I'm going to tell all you guys, and I still embody it to this, I have to remind myself that it's a process and I have to focus on the progress. And that's really it. And I can't expect perfection because perfection actually doesn't exist. Perfection is an idealism of what you think may or may not happen, of what a perceived perception of what is. But if you keep focusing on progress and that is a part of the process, then that you can control. And that's the coolest part. So my hero's journey says at this point that now I have new challenges. And it's great because the reality is I feel I'm ready for any of these new challenges. As long as I do what I always do, just put myself in the right state, think of the right outcome, figure out what it is I really want, and just attack it from there. Because if you're not in the right state of what it is you're thinking about, so if I'm not in the right state of what I'm thinking about and it comes off incorrectly, then you're going to have a misalignment. Because one of the coolest things is communication is about what is heard, not what is said. So what matters more is the reaction I get from someone as opposed to what it is I say. Because if I say ABC and they hear XYZ, then there's a misalignment. Anyways, this is my hero's journey about how putting in the work and understanding that it takes time and there's going to be days that aren't going to be as easy as others, but it's worth it in the end. It's worth it all. And hope to see all of you guys and your hero's journeys and understand where it is you're currently at and where I can help. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye for now.